The silence in orbit was thick. Not the kind you get in space, but the kind that settles after humiliation. Commander Reese sat still in his chair, staring out at the endless black speckled with distant stars, jaw clenched tight. Earth wasn't glowing, wasn't thriving, wasn't broadcasting peace or defiance. It was quiet. Too quiet. The Galactic Dominion had arrived 3 years ago with grand ships, all diplomacy laced with threats. They offered Earth protection, but everyone knew what that meant. The Federation had seen what happened to Mars, glassed from orbit when they resisted integration. And Earth? Earth folded. They signed the pact. They handed over the keys to their skies. No fight, no fuss. Just silence. Reese never believed it was surrender. Not really. He had served in Black Ops long enough to know his species. Humanity doesn't beg. It waits. It calculates. Then it makes the whole damn galaxy bleed when the time is right. He remembered the day the Dominion general strutted through New York, like he owned it. 10 feet tall, covered in thick armored scales, flanked by floating drones and barking orders in that translator-split voice. Reese had stood in the crowd, just a face among many. The alien had laughed. "Your planet is peaceful. You were wise to yield," he had said, claws twitching arrogantly, and Earth had nodded, bowed, even smiled. But Reese hadn't smiled. Neither had the scientists forced to work in alien labs. Neither had the pilots grounded while Dominion scouts patrolled human skies. And certainly not the boy who'd watched his father get executed for verbal insubordination when he asked one question too many. That boy was now 17. His name was Dax. Reese didn't know him yet, but he would. Now, here in Earth's orbital station, Reese stood among the last fragments of humanity's dignity. A small station manned by fewer than 20, supposedly for joint surveillance. In reality, it was a prison in orbit, with Dominion advisors watching every move, pretending not to mock Earth's incompetence. The Dominion didn't know about the vault under Antarctica, the one where humanity had stashed everything the aliens hadn't thought to confiscate. Not just weapons, ideas, secrets, rage. Reese checked the silent signal. It pulsed once. That was all he needed. He stood, his uniform stiff and gray. He turned to the alien assigned as liaison, a narrow-eyed thing with gelatinous skin and a permanent sneer. "Tell your fleet command to back off Earth's stratosphere," Reese said plainly. The alien snorted. "You have no authority to make demands." Reese smiled this time. "That's the last mistake you'll ever make." Before the liaison could respond, the station's systems flared red. Every monitor turned black. Every Dominion system went offline, not hacked, not jammed, deleted. Across the moon's far side, deep within an installation that didn't officially exist, something ancient and artificial came to life for the first time. Not alien tech, not some borrowed Dominion scrap. It was human, and it was angry. A weapon built not to destroy, but to send a message. Within seconds, every Dominion warship in Earth's orbit froze, their systems corrupted, their AI scrambled, their captains screaming into dead channels. On Earth, the skies split open, but not with fire, with light, with warning. And above them all, on every Dominion broadcast, a single sentence burned itself into their systems, translated into every language known in the galaxy. "You mistook our patience for weakness. This is your first and final warning." And then everything went dark. The lights came back, slowly. In orbit, systems rebooted with a hum like waking beasts. Reese stood still, face calm, arms crossed over his chest. Around him, Dominion personnel staggered, confused, some frightened, a few arrogant enough to think it was a glitch. a momentary loss of control. But Reese knew better. That flash? That wasn't a warning shot. That was a statement. Earth had just spoken, for the first time in years, and its voice shook the entire Dominion fleet. Not a single shot fired, not a body dropped, just a clean, precise erasure of power, a demonstration, and it had worked. He saw it in the eyes of the alien liaison now, that twitch of unease, that realization that Earth hadn't been tamed. It had been waiting. Back on the surface, in the scorched remains of what used to be Chicago's Central District, 17-year-old Dax crouched beside a pile of burnt metal and watched the skies with bloodshot eyes. He'd seen the light from the blast. He'd felt it in his gut, not destruction, but intention. The Dominion's patrol ships had gone quiet, hovering like neutered predators. For the first time in his life, he saw fear on the faces of the aliens. His hands were dirty, fingers blistered from scrapping old electronics for barter. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His mother, once a cybernetics engineer, now swept floors in a Dominion research hub for stale rations. His father, executed when Dax was 13, had been a lecturer, one of the last to speak publicly about the human spirit, before Dominion laws declared that phrase seditious. That blast from the sky felt like a ghost rising from his father's grave. A low whistle came from beside him. It was Kerr, a lanky boy with rust-colored hair and one eye permanently swollen shut from a punishment beating. "What the hell was that?" Kerr asked, squinting upward. Dax didn't answer immediately. He knew better than to say what he really thought. Not out loud, not where ears might be listening. But then, maybe it didn't matter anymore. "I think," he said slowly, "someone up there just reminded them we're not done." Kerr scoffed, spitting into the dirt. "Yeah? Well, I hope that someone has a damn army." Dax nodded slowly. "They do. They just kept it buried deep, like everything else they stole from us." Buried where? Everywhere. Silence fell again. A kind of silence Dax hadn't known in years. Not the oppressed kind, but the expectant kind. He didn't know how he knew, but something had changed. He felt it in the ground, in the still air, in the way even the Dominion drones now circled slower, less confident. In orbit, chaos bloomed. A dozen Dominion captains argued over open channels, their languages clicking, buzzing, snarling over one another. The liaison assigned to Reese snarled and reached for his weapon, but before he could draw it, a bolt of electricity surged through his armor. His body convulsed once, then slumped to the floor. Reese didn't even flinch. "You had your warning," he muttered, stepping over the smoking corpse. He tapped his comlink, patched into the now active black channel, Earth's deep-frequency military line, completely invisible to Dominion tech. It hadn't broadcast in years. A voice crackled in, older, gruff, unmistakably human. "Protocol Echo 7 confirmed. You in position?" Reese responded without hesitation. "Always was. Begin Phase 2. Halfway around the world, in a locked bunker beneath the Andes, a room filled with 30 engineers erupted into motion. None wore uniforms. None had names on their chests. They weren't soldiers. They were Earth's insurance policy. The minds who had vanished from public life after the surrender. Thought dead. They weren't. They'd gone underground to build what Earth would need if and when patience ran out. They called it the Quiet Rebellion. They didn't build fleets. They didn't build weapons in the traditional sense. They built control. Systems that could override, infiltrate, and reprogram every piece of Dominion hardware that had ever touched Earth. Over years, they planted back doors. Tiny, insignificant, dormant. Until now. Earth hadn't needed to fight the Dominion with brute force. It had turned its own enslavement into a trap, Every satellite, every drone, every Dominion hub, infected with silent human code, sleeping for years. Until Reese gave the signal. Within minutes, entire communication relays across the solar system blinked out. Dominion Fleet Command tried to reassert control. It was like trying to put out a wildfire with a breath. Their ships no longer responded to orders. Their drones began flying patterns not in Dominion code, but in Earth's ancient tactical grid. Military patterns long buried after the World Wars. And still, Earth didn't fire. Not a single shot. It just took control back. Dax and Kerr found themselves part of something they didn't understand yet. The city that had slouched under alien rule for years began to stir. The power grid flickered, not out, but up. Screens that once blasted Dominion propaganda now showed nothing but the Earth flag. No words, just the symbol. Old, forgotten, but not dead. An old man with a limp and a scar over his eye walked out into the street with a shotgun slung over his shoulder. He didn't aim it. He didn't say anything. He just walked like the street belonged to him again. And people followed. First a few, then hundreds. No one shouted. No one screamed. They just stood. When the Dominion patrols tried to reassert order, they found their weapons dead, their suits frozen, their vehicles unmoving. For the first time since Earth bowed its head, the occupiers were naked. And they were terrified. Reese watched from orbit as the Dominion fleet, once an iron grip around Earth, drifted in chaos. Captains begged for instructions. Sub-commanders screamed into dead links. And from beyond Saturn's orbit, the first wave of reinforcements had turned around, refusing to enter Earth's sphere of influence. A single act of technological dominion had shifted everything. But Reese knew it wasn't over. The Dominion wasn't just a fleet. It was an empire. And empires didn't tolerate rebellion, especially not from a species it had labeled as culturally stagnant. Earth's silent years had been mistaken for death. Now they'd see it wasn't death, it was hibernation. And humans? Humans always woke up hungry. Inside the Dominion High Council's core vessel, orbiting a quiet gas giant hundreds of light-years away, a transmission arrived. It came in clean. No encryption. No threat. Just a video. A young human boy standing in front of the cracked remains of a Dominion outpost. Dust on his face. Fire in his eyes. No hate. Just certainty. "I'm not a soldier. I'm not a rebel. I'm not even old enough to vote. Not that I ever could." He held up a datapad, Dominion tech, and smashed it under his boot. "You took our skies. You stole our cities. You killed my father for asking a question." He looked straight into the camera. "And you're not taking anything else." Behind him, hundreds of humans stood silent, shoulder to shoulder. "We're not attacking. We're remembering who we are. And soon, you will too." The feed cut. The council sat in silence. No one moved. Because the worst kind of enemy isn't the one who attacks. It's the one who waits, watches, and chooses the moment that hurts the most. And Earth had chosen. The Dominion's retaliation didn't take long. Within 30 hours of Earth's digital uprising, reinforcements arrived. Not just warships, but dreadnoughts. Massive cruisers with planetary bombardment capabilities, the kind they'd use to reduce a Jovian moon colony to ash when its inhabitants staged a minor food riot. Now they pointed those guns at Earth. On every screen across the planet, their message blared, "Compliance failure acknowledged. Reclamation protocol engaged. Return planetary systems to Dominion control within one cycle or face irreversible consequence." Dax sat on the edge of a rusted-out transit bus in the ruins of central Chicago, watching the skies. He didn't understand all the tech, but he knew one thing. Those weren't patrol ships anymore. Those were executioners. Kerr was chewing a protein bar like it was his last meal. So, we gonna die or what? Dax shrugged, then stood. Maybe, but not for free. Kerr looked up. You got a plan now, or just big speeches and dramatic pacing? I know a guy, Dax muttered. My dad used to talk about him. Back when the Dominion started taking over schools. He used to say, there's one man they didn't catch. He went dark. If he ever comes back, hell's coming with him. Kerr squinted. You mean, like, a myth? No, Dax said, his voice steady. He was real, and I think he's back. That same moment, far above, Commander Reese stood in the command bay of the orbital station, now fully under Earth control. His second-in-command, a weathered woman named Merrick, handed him a data slate. 17 Dreadnought-class vessels within striking range, she said quietly. We can jam them. We can delay them. But we can't stop them. Reese nodded. Not with guns. You thinking of the failsafe? No, not yet. That button's one way. But we can still push. He tapped the interface, connecting to Earth's black net, the ghosted communication system invisible to Dominion scanners. The rebellion was alive in whispers and sparks. He saw the map. Red zones turning to gray, gray to green. Cities like Boston, Berlin, Dakar, Seoul, all rising in quiet defiance. Not with riots, not with violence, with seizure. They were taking their infrastructure back, piece by piece, one terminal at a time. The key was simple. Control the systems, and you controlled the planet. The Dominion didn't realize how much of their own hardware had been integrated into Earth. And Earth had turned that tech into a weapon without lifting a single rifle. Reese leaned forward, voice calm but cold. Let's give them something to really fear. The dreadnoughts reached low orbit within hours, giant beasts of black alloy and pulsar engines. Their presence alone sent tremors through the cities below. Dominion sirens blared in human settlements. Comms were flooded with panic. And then, one by one, the dreadnoughts began to fail. Not explode, not crash, shut down. It started with their shields, flickering, then dying. Then their AI cores, rebooting over and over. By the time the second dreadnought's weapon systems went offline, the command crews inside were screaming. They didn't know it yet, but Earth had wormed into their ships the moment they'd entered the atmosphere. Earth wasn't resisting with firepower. It was using shame. The Dominion's mightiest vessels, helpless, floating above the planet they claimed to own. They couldn't attack. They couldn't retreat. They could only drift. News traveled fast. Even in the far sectors of the Dominion's empire, whispers began. About a planet of apes, once quiet, now hacking dreadnoughts from the surface. About a species labeled docile, now becoming untouchable. The Dominion's propaganda networks scrambled. They framed it as a glitch, as a containment issue, as anything but what it was, a full-scale reversal. But then came the broadcast. This time it wasn't Dax. It was Reese. His face was weathered, his voice deep, calm, and unapologetic. No theatrics, no bravado, just truth. You asked us for submission. We gave you silence. You interpreted that silence as weakness. That was your mistake. He paused. The stars behind him flared, casting shadow across his features. This is not a war. This is a correction, and you are out of time. The feed cut. No demands, no declarations, just those words, and the image of Dominion dreadnoughts frozen in Earth's sky like dead gods. Down on the surface, Dax walked with purpose now. He had made contact with a man named Halden, a ghost from his father's stories, a man who supposedly disappeared the day Earth signed the pact, a man rumored to be behind something called Project Worm. They met in an old subway station beneath the ashes of the university district. Halden didn't look like a myth. He looked like an old man who hadn't slept in years. Long beard, wiry frame, clothes patched by hand. "You're Jacob's boy," he said. "Didn't think I'd ever see the day one of his blood came walking through my door." "He used to talk about you," Dax said quietly. Halden nodded. "Yeah, we all used to talk. We thought we were winning. Then we lost everything. So we went underground. We buried everything that could give us a second shot." "Like Project Worm?" Halden's eyes darkened. "Where did you hear that?" "My dad." Halden didn't answer right away. He paced. Thought. Then finally turned to Dax. "You want to help Earth?" he asked. "Yes." "You willing to die for it?" "I already did when they killed him." Halden gave a slight nod. "Good, because Worm isn't a bomb. It's something far worse. Project Worm was a consciousness. Not AI, not intelligence. It was memory. A copy of everything Earth had been before the surrender. Every tactic, every piece of war doctrine, every psychological profile, every manipulation, every rage, stored in quantum isolation, disconnected from any system, untraceable, until now. Halden explained it like this. The Dominion never feared our guns. They feared our unpredictability, so we became predictable. But Worm is the opposite. It's pure chaos encoded in logic. You plug it into any network, and it rewrites instinct. Dax didn't understand it all, but he understood this. It was Earth's final message, weaponized, and Halden was about to release it. In orbit, the Dominion fleet attempted re-entry. One dreadnought reactivated a single thruster. A test. A threat. Reese watched. He gave no order. Instead, a small drone, barely the size of a basketball, launched from the moon's surface. It drifted lazily toward the dreadnought. No weapons, no alarms, just a signal. It carried Worm. The moment it touched the dreadnought's hull, the ship spasmed, not physically, but in code. Inside, Dominion officers screamed as lights flickered into hallucinations. Their HUD scrolled ancient Earth war speeches. Their AI began predicting human strategies instead of Dominion responses. In 10 seconds, the ship shut down. In 20, it turned toward the Dominion fleet itself. Worm had infected it, and it was evolving. Reese stood in silence. He knew what Worm meant. This wasn't a battle anymore. This was psychological warfare at a planetary level. Earth wouldn't fire first. It wouldn't fire at all. It would hijack everything and leave the Dominion too terrified to push forward. And if the Dominion did fire, then Earth would burn it all, not out of anger, out of principle, because the universe had made a mistake. It had thought silence meant surrender. Now it knew silence was the inhale before the scream. Back on the surface, Dax looked out at the streets as people began tearing down Dominion banners. Not in rage, in peace. For the first time in his life, he saw his people unafraid. Kerr nudged him. "You think this is it? We won." Dax shook his head. "No, not yet. But we reminded them who we are." "And who's that?" Dax looked at the sky. "We're the reason empires fall." The Dominion was hemorrhaging. Across 12 sectors, their command channels were corrupted. Dreadnoughts weren't just dead in the sky. They were confused, disoriented, isolated. AI cores glitched on loops. Orders translated incorrectly. Ships began broadcasting human emotional frequencies to one another without realizing it. One officer on a patrol vessel near Mars clawed his own eyes out after Worm looped a recording of a child's scream for 18 straight hours through his implants. It wasn't just malfunction anymore, it was mental warfare. And Earth wasn't asking for surrender. It wasn't asking for anything. That was what broke the Dominion more than anything else. Because they couldn't understand it. Empires thrive on cause and effect. Resistance met with force, uprising met with extermination. But Earth wasn't resisting in the traditional sense. It was simply existing louder, taking back its infrastructure without debate, reprogramming its subnets, blinding its invaders, exposing them one by one as irrelevant. And through it all, Earth hadn't fired a single bullet, yet Dominion ships continued to crash. Not from impact, but from despair. In the mountains of northern China, Halden stood beside Dax as the latest drone activated. They were in a forgotten launch facility from the 2050s, long buried under rock and snow. It smelled like cold metal and old regrets. "You understand what this is, don't you?" Halden asked, not looking at him. Dax nodded. "Worm?" Halden turned. "No. This moment, this choice. We can release Worm globally, beyond Earth, into the wider net. Every Dominion AI in the galaxy, from command ships to colonization drones, it'll all go blind, panic, collapse." "Then do it," Dax said quickly, with sharp, youthful certainty. Halden's eyes narrowed. "What happens after that?" Dax hesitated. "We win." Halden chuckled, but there was no joy in it. "No, that's not a win. That's total war. There won't be surrender. There won't be negotiations. They'll throw the entire weight of the Dominion at us. Every cruiser, every soldier, every system. And not for justice, for pride." "Let them," Dax snapped. Halden stepped closer. "And what happens when they glass our cities? When orbital strikes level our oceans? When they make Mars and Europa watch us burn as a warning to others?" Dax didn't answer, because he didn't know. Back in orbit, Reese was in the command deck again, staring down at the Earth, glowing, proud, and silent. Marek entered, her face tight. "We have confirmation. 3 High Command Dominion fleets have begun acceleration burn from Ardanis sector. Estimated arrival in 42 days. Reese exhaled through his nose. "Retaliation fleet. Massive. Triple the size of the fleet that took the Theros system." He turned to her. And they're not coming to negotiate. That much was clear. Dominion couldn't afford this embarrassment, not with half the galaxy watching. They'd built their empire on the illusion of absolute control. And now Earth had shattered that illusion, without drawing blood. But Reese knew what was coming. Blood was coming. Not because Earth wanted it, because pride would demand it. Elsewhere, in the abandoned shell of the old UN headquarters in Geneva, humans gathered again. The New Round Table, they called it. Representatives of Earth's underground resistance cells, technocratic enclaves, and even a few rogue ex-officers from the puppet governments installed by the Dominion. The building had been left to rot for years. Vines cracked the walls. The floors were stained with mold. But the flag they hung from the center beam, the old Earth flag, still looked clean. Reese arrived via shuttle under blackout flight path. He walked into the hall and looked at the faces. Tired, lean, fierce. One of them, a quiet man with a missing hand, spoke first. "You've done something no one else has. You made them afraid." "They're sending fleets," Reese said plainly. "Not diplomats. We embarrassed them. Now they want blood." "So we fight." Reese looked at him. "With what?" The man flinched. "We have Worm. We have the drone systems. We have mines." "Not enough," Reese said. "They'll come in waves. If we win the first, there will be a second. If we win the second, they'll just send more. They have systems to spare. We only have one planet." Another voice, A woman in her 30s with a plasma scar down her neck stood. Then we take their systems, like we took their ships. We spread worm. Murmurs of agreement. But Reese wasn't convinced. Worm is a fire, he said. We point it outward and lose control. It won't just burn them. It might burn everything. Silence fell. Dax, sitting in the back, spoke for the first time. My father died asking questions, he said. He believed in words, in reason. But they killed him. Not because he threatened them, but because he reminded them that we had memory, that we could choose. He stood. This isn't about winning. It's about ending the lie, that we're conquered, that we've submitted, that we forgot who we were. Reese looked at the boy and felt the familiar ache in his chest, the one that always came when he remembered the beginning of this war, the mistakes, the compromise, the shame of silence. Maybe the kid was right. Maybe the lie needed to die, even if they all did with it. 4 days later, Earth's skies changed again. This time not with warnings, with declarations. In every human settlement, hacked Dominion monitors lit up with a symbol, not Earth's flag, but a white spiral burning against a black screen, the mark of worm. Then came the message, from Earth's own central net. Not Reese, not Halden, but worm itself. A voice, synthetic but familiar, played in every language. We remember. You thought we were broken. You thought silence was submission. Now you will learn. This silence was a storm waiting for a reason. And with that, Worm was launched, not everywhere, just enough. Targeted systems in key Dominion sectors, command outposts, manufacturing hubs, surveillance AI. It didn't cripple the Dominion. It embarrassed them. Elite fleets reported random shutdowns, weapons turned off in mid-flight. Troops marched in circles due to GPS corruption. Dozens of outposts began playing old Earth war music on loops. Psychological sabotage, not destruction. Disruption. Reese watched the Dominion implode on itself. And Earth? Earth remained untouched, a single proud stone in a galaxy full of fire. But there was cost. Halden died 3 days after launch. Not in battle, heart failure. He was too old, too tired. But he died smiling, knowing he'd lived long enough to see it. To know the ghosts didn't fade in vain. Kerr, Dax's friend, was found beaten unconscious behind a Dominion scout wreck in Nairobi, the first open clash between Dominion loyalists and civilians. The resistance called it a ripple, just the start. Reese knew more was coming, so he wrote a letter. He didn't know who it was for, maybe Earth itself, but he wrote it anyway. We were quiet because we needed to be. We gave them our hands, our skies, our tongues, but we never gave them our soul. We never gave them our memory. And now that memory is awake, and it remembers what we are. We are not warriors. We are not machines. We are worse. We are human. And that means we adapt. That means we wait. That means we remember who breaks us. And when the time comes, we teach them why that was the last mistake they'll ever make. The retaliation fleet entered the solar system cloaked in rage. 67 vessels, 10 dreadnoughts, thousands of soldiers genetically engineered for war, tactical AI cores hardened against infiltration, massive weapons built not for negotiation, but extinction. The Dominion's shame had festered into fury. They weren't coming to reclaim Earth. They were coming to erase it. Reese stood in Earth's orbital command station, watching the incoming data feeds. The fleet moved like a wolf pack, tight formation, shields full, comms silent, no showboating, no broadcasts. This wasn't a performance. This was punishment. Merrick stood at his side. Her eyes were tired, red from lack of sleep. They're broadcasting nothing, she said. They don't have to, Reese replied. They're here to prove a point. Then maybe we should make one first. Reese looked down at Earth, cities pulsing with resistance, humanity no longer bowed. Worm's tendrils had already started weaving into the Dominion's long-distance networks, but this fleet wasn't relying on Dominion net infrastructure. It was flying blind, unplugged, raw force, smart, they'd learned. But not fast enough. On the ground, Dax watched the burning trails streak across the sky as the first wave of Dominion gunships entered low orbit. He stood on a rooftop near what used to be O'Hare International. The airport had been stripped and converted into a civilian evac zone, but not one ship had taken off. Nobody was running. They were waiting. Beside him, Kerr, still bandaged and limping, raised a pair of old military binoculars. "They look like gods," he muttered. "They're not," Dax said. "They bleed, just like we do." Halden's death still lingered in Dax's chest. The old man had believed in precision, subtlety, minimal force with maximum psychological damage. But Dax was young, and he had watched his father die for a question. Now he had answers, and those answers were pointing toward war. Deep in the underground vaults below Antarctica, the final node of Worm blinked to life. It had been dormant, kept isolated even from its sibling nodes to prevent total corruption. If activated, it wouldn't just interfere with systems, it would take control. Hijack weapons, override navigation, speak through AI interfaces, and manipulate sensory data. It wouldn't destroy the fleet. It would turn the fleet against itself. Reese had the access code. Merrick handed him the encrypted control device. "We use this," she said, "and they'll never come near Earth again." Reese stared at it. A smooth silver panel with a single biometric pad. "Or we risk escalation," he said. "We hijack their fleet and they'll think Earth's a virus. They'll wipe us out to prevent contamination." "We are a virus," Merrick said quietly. "One they created, one they fed, one they thought they cured." Reese looked at her, saw no fear in her face, just exhaustion, anger, pride. And he realized the truth. Earth would never go back, even if they died. The first shots came hours later, not from space, from within. Dominion loyalist cells embedded across Earth began triggering sabotage efforts. Explosions ripped through infrastructure hubs in Lagos, Rio, and Warsaw. AI sentinels turned on civilians. A former Dominion governor in Johannesburg activated a recall code, shutting down the city's energy grid. Dax and Kerr sprinted through the smoke as Dominion enforcers in modified exosuits roamed the streets, firing into groups of unarmed civilians. These weren't formal soldiers. These were punishers, those left behind to mop up defiance before the main fleet arrived. But they didn't expect Earth's silence to finally scream. From rooftops and sewers, human resistance cells emerged. Some had nothing more than home-forged EMP blasters and magnetic explosives. Others carried salvaged Dominion plasma rifles. But they didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like people who had nothing left to lose. Dax watched as a group of civilians brought down a Dominion enforcer using nothing but trap wire, oil, and fire. The armored suit didn't scream. It simply collapsed, hard, and then exploded. The flames lit the skyline like dawn. The uprising had begun for real, not quiet, not strategic, not clean. Real. In orbit, the retaliation fleet adjusted course. They had seen the flare of internal resistance. Internal Dominion systems scrambled to reassert control, but Worm's early infections made that impossible. Half of the fleet's long-range comms were already compromised. Backup AIs started to show symptoms: recursion loops, false targeting data, emotional bleed-through. Worm hadn't attacked yet, but it had infiltrated. Reese pressed his palm against the panel. A pause. Then Worm spoke, softly, through his earpiece. "You understand what happens next?" Reese didn't answer. "You can still choose caution." but Reese had already chosen. Execute Directive 9. Confirmed. In silence, the infected Dominion dreadnought Vox Immacula rotated 90 degrees off formation. Its weapons lit up, not toward Earth, but toward its sister ship, Jurex 11. A single antimatter round fired, fast and accurate. It hit the Jurex at mid-structure. Explosion. Then screaming through the Dominion comms. Not human voices, alien shrieks, confusion, betrayal. The fleet broke formation. A second ship, infected, launched counterfire. Then a third. The Dominion fleet began devouring itself. And Earth watched. Dax stood atop a collapsed tower, watching the sky rip open. He saw the flash of burning hulls, the crashing of debris. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He simply understood. This wasn't justice. This was balance. What they had done to Mars, to his father, to their freedom. Now it was coming back. Inside the Dominion flagship, chaos reigned. Commanders shouting, AI failing, orders overlapping. The Admiral, a 12-foot-tall quadruped named Urzek, grabbed a subordinate by the throat and demanded answers. None came. The screens only showed a single spiral symbol, rotating in silence. Urzek slammed his clawed fist onto the command console. "This is not resistance. This is infection." He was right. But it was too late. Reese didn't gloat. He knew what came next. The Dominion wouldn't retreat again. They'd escalate. They'd call it a viral event, a planet-scale anomaly. They wouldn't just come to destroy Earth next time. They'd come to erase its memory from the universe. And maybe that was okay, because Earth had already done the one thing the Dominion never expected. It had become the story. Not the victim. Not the conquered. The catalyst. Back in the vault beneath Antarctica, Merrick initiated the final protocol, a slow, looping signal transmitted across Dominion deep space channels encoded in human voice. It said only, "We were never yours. We were waiting, and now we are awake." It repeated endlessly. It couldn't be stopped. And Dominion systems, once the most sophisticated in the galaxy, began to crash under the weight of human defiance. A voice they couldn't trace, a signal they couldn't cleanse, a wound they couldn't cauterize. Dax and Kerr watched the skies burn. A Dominion dreadnought fell in pieces over the ocean. Another shattered near Alaska. Civilians didn't panic. They didn't run. They stood and watched the sky bleed, because they had waited long enough. And now it was their turn to be feared. The galaxy watched in disbelief. The destruction of Dominion fleets was broadcast across forbidden channels, pirate networks, and abandoned relay satellites from the outer rims to the civilized core. A backwater planet, known primarily for its early surrender and biological volatility, had just brought the Dominion's pride to its knees without ever engaging in open warfare. Not with bombs, not with fleets, but with corruption, with memory, with fear. The signal Earth had released, the repeating spiral encoded with a voice of calm defiance, was now spreading faster than the Dominion could shut it down. Ships in distant systems experienced delayed responses. AI systems slowed. Some malfunctioned entirely. In certain colonies, newly installed Dominion governance simply collapsed, unable to process conflicting directives from their scrambled command. Earth had done more than rebel. It had infected the idea of obedience itself. And in the cracks that formed, old whispers reawakened. On the mining colony of Hydra 3, a Dominion sub-governor received word of the fleet's implosion. His officers stood silent in his command chamber, unsure of whether to continue suppressing the local uprisings or to wait for new directives. They never came. And when the governor tried to make contact with Dominion High Command, the screen filled with static. Then a face. Not human, but old. An exile, a race long suppressed by the Dominion. "You see now," the alien said. "They can bleed. Earth proved it. Within hours, Hydra 3 declared independence. In the depth of the Galaxis Syndicate, a merchant network long forced to submit to Dominion tariffs and patrols, a clandestine gathering took place. Dozens of species, smugglers, engineers, former soldiers. At the center of it all, a man in a hooded coat, older, worn, eyes filled with cold fire. Human. He simply said, "Earth has reminded them of fear, but fear spreads both ways. If they come for us next, we need to be ready." Someone asked, "And if Earth's infection spreads to us too?" The man smiled. "Then maybe it's time to stop living in cages." Meanwhile, Earth itself was beginning to understand the weight of what it had started. In Geneva, inside the repurposed ruins of the UN complex, Reese met with the Resistance Council again. This time the mood was different. Not celebratory, not fearful, conflicted. Marek was the first to speak. "Our message is spreading farther than we intended. The Dominion's networks are collapsing. Colonies are declaring rebellion using our signal." "And?" Reese asked, half knowing what was coming. "And some of those colonies are run by warlords, pirates, slavers, opportunists," she said. Dax, standing in the back again, stepped forward. "So what? That's not our fault. We didn't make them monsters." "No," Marek said sharply. "But we gave them cover. The Dominion kept order, however brutal. Now we've cracked that foundation. The galaxy is watching, and it sees chaos rising through the seams." Reese sat in silence. He knew she was right. They had planned for Earth's survival, not for becoming a symbol. The Resistance had started with one goal: make the Dominion bleed, make them retreat, reclaim sovereignty. But Earth's method, psychological disruption, AI infiltration, signal warfare, wasn't surgical anymore. It was viral. Other races, other planets, were now replicating Earth's techniques, using rudimentary versions of worm-like systems. Some had noble causes. Others didn't. One faction on a distant desert world had used the signal to hijack Dominion cargo ships, then bomb a rival colony out of existence. And they did it chanting Earth's spiral. The symbol was no longer a banner of hope alone. It was becoming a flag of rebellion. And rebellion, unshaped, always becomes anarchy. In private, Marek confronted Reese. "You need to send a second message," she said. "Something cleaner, something controlled. If we let every creature with a grudge claim they're Earth-inspired, we'll become the target of every future retaliation, including from our own allies." Reese leaned back against the old concrete wall, arms folded. "And say what? That we're sorry we fought back?" "No," she said. "Say that Earth is not chaos. Earth is purpose." He didn't respond. Because deep down, Reese wasn't sure anymore if purpose still existed, or if the dam had already broken beyond repair. Dax had no such doubts. While politicians and ex-generals argued in ruins of old-world power, he was in the streets, helping civilians, finding food routes, blocking out Dominion loyalist sabotage units still crawling beneath cities like rats. He didn't want medals. He wanted order, but not the Dominion's, humanity's. And when a message came through the Resistance comnet, an encrypted signal bouncing from the edge of Saturn's orbit, Dax answered it. It was the rogue merchant syndicate, the one building quietly in the shadows, the one planning to help Earth, or so they claimed. A voice came through the static. "Earth proved something important, but power is dangerous when left alone. We want to help stabilize, trade, structure, alliance." Dax narrowed his eyes. "What's the price?" "Recognition, autonomy, access to worm fragments. You become the face of the Resistance. We build a network." "You want me to lead a movement?" "No, we want you to be the myth." Back at the vault beneath Antarctica, Reese sat alone. He was reviewing casualty logs. They were heavier than he'd hoped. Even without direct conflict from the retaliation fleet, Earth's civil clashes, loyalist bombs, and rogue faction uprisings had killed over 10,000 civilians in a matter of weeks. He replayed one specific video on loop. A girl, 6 years old, caught in a street firefight in Nairobi between Dominion enforcers and human rebels. The spiral burned on the wall behind her. She looked up at it. Then her body fell. Reese shut the feed off. For a long time, he didn't move. Then he stood and began writing again. They wanted silence. So we gave them silence wrapped in code. But now silence has teeth. And those teeth bite not just the hand that fed us chains, but every open hand as well. The galaxy was changing, and Earth had done it. But victory wasn't peace. Victory was now a burden. In the following weeks, multiple independent systems requested contact with Earth's command, some in fear, others in desperation, a few in admiration. A handful wanted to learn from Worm, others wanted to join. Some offered ships, soldiers, tech. But a few had darker offers. "We want your chaos," one warlord said. "Train us to be like you." Reese didn't reply. He just cut the channel. Because Earth hadn't taught the galaxy to rebel. It had taught the galaxy to question. And that, Reese realized, was even more dangerous. Meanwhile, deep in Dominion space, the High Command met in secrecy, their pride shattered, their fleets humiliated, their AI corrupted. They had two choices: negotiate or annihilate. And one voice in that dark room, the youngest among them, cold and unblinking, said something that chilled every commander present. "They used silence as a weapon. Let's answer them with silence of our own." "What do you mean?" "No message, no threat, no invasion." "Then what?" The young commander's mandibles clicked together softly. "We erase the species from existence, quietly, without monument, without trace." They called it Operation Null. The Dominion didn't send a transmission, didn't declare war, no threats, no ultimatums, just a covert movement of black-armored annihilation ships, no insignias, no commanders' names on any record, no public authorization. Not even Dominion citizens would know they had been deployed. These were extermination ships, rarely used, built not for conquest but for wiping species from history. No prisoners, no diplomacy, no memory, just sterilized planets and silent aftermaths. One fleet, 12 ships, weaponry capable of cracking Earth's crust from orbit in under 3 hours. And they were already halfway to Sol. Back on Earth, nobody knew. Not yet. The Dominion's silence had unnerved command, but Earth's skies remained still. The last remnants of the retaliation fleet had retreated or self-destructed under Worm's psychological warfare. To many, it looked like Earth had won. Cities were rebuilding. Resistance groups were organizing into governance cells. Marek had been put in charge of restructuring a planetary council. Dax was becoming a symbol. Young, driven, untouchable by the older generation's fear. Every broadcast with his face pulled in support across the underground networks, especially on colony worlds struggling under the Dominion's shadow. But Reese didn't trust the silence. He'd seen it before. The real kind. The kind that came before the killing started. In orbit, new satellites were being deployed, modified to resist infiltration and masked from detection. Human engineers worked around the clock, still underfed, still overworked. But they moved with purpose. And Reese moved among them, inspecting, organizing, watching the skies. Marek joined him at Docking Bay 6. "Global stability's holding," she said. "Food drops in Southeast Asia are moving. Africa's got a tech hub rebuilding already. South America's finally talking about shared water distribution." "And the worm signal?" Reese asked. "Still spreading, not as fast. We cut off some fringe channels, tried to prevent any more rogue states from claiming they speak for Earth." Reese stared at her. But they still do. Merrick hesitated. Yeah. Some. He turned toward the viewport. The blue arc of Earth glowed below them, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking past it. They're not done with us, he said. You feel it? She nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. Dax had become the voice of Earth's youth. He didn't want it, but he didn't reject it either. He walked through refugee zones now, not as a victim or a soldier, but as a bridge between both. People stopped him, asked questions, begged for guidance. Most of the time he didn't have answers, but he had something else. Conviction. To them, that was enough. And when a private call came through encrypted comms, a message from the Hydra 3 Independence Council, he answered it personally. A tired alien voice spoke. You've awakened something we thought long buried, it rasped. We want to help, but we can't protect you from what's coming. What is coming? Dax asked. Silence, the voice said, the kind that buries planets. In deep space, Operation Null neared Saturn's orbit. Their ships emitted no signals, no broadcasts, not even heat signatures. They were wrapped in a technology Earth hadn't yet encountered. Folded light, quantum distorters, void sails. But Earth had learned to listen differently. Worm wasn't just a code now. It had become a sensory system. It sniffed anomalies, tracked disruptions in quantum fields, monitored gravity pulses invisible to conventional sensors, and on a satellite station above Neptune's moon, Nereid, Worm woke up. An interface came online without human command. It read a strange pulse moving inward at impossible speeds, 12 signatures, silent, intent, total atmospheric disruption. Worm didn't need to ask permission. It sent the data to Reese. Then it rerouted all Earth systems into Red Silence protocol. Reese got the alert mid-shift. He froze for only a second. Then he moved. Get me Merrick. Full system lockdown. Activate Artemis Net. Pull Dax from all field zones, now! The techs on the station jumped to motion. Alarms didn't sound. They couldn't risk panic, but a red haze bled into the station lights. Merrick arrived within minutes. It's them, isn't it? Reese nodded grimly. Annihilation class. Full ghost fleet. How long? 3 hours until they're within range. Merrick didn't ask what kind of weapons those ships carried. She'd seen one of them during the purge of Aranex 9. Nothing had survived. No atmosphere. No crust. Not even the oceans. On Earth, Dax received the extraction command while standing in a broken train station in what was once northern France. His face tightened. He looked around at the people gathering supplies, repairing lines, planting food in rooftop gardens. Get to the shuttle, Kerr urged him. If they take you out, we lose morale. Dax didn't move. They're not coming to break morale, he said. They're coming to erase everything. Then what the hell do we do? Dax picked up his comm and connected to the council. Patch me into all public Earth channels. Every network, resistance band, pirate radio, station feed, everything. Merrick's voice came through. Now? Now. Across Earth, the signal lit up. Dax's face appeared, tired but calm. And he spoke, not like a boy, but like the heart of something ancient and angry. This is Earth, again. I know some of you are tired of hearing from us. Some think we went too far. That we broke something sacred. That we turned resistance into infection. He paused. That might be true. But you don't understand yet what we were up against. He looked straight into the camera. They're coming again. This time not with threats, not with commands. They won't even speak. A flicker of something dark crossed his eyes. They're coming to silence us for good. He stepped back, his tone hardened. But Earth isn't just a place anymore. It's not just humans, it's a memory, a signal, a truth. You kill the people, the planet, the air. We still echo. You can't kill what we've become. He raised one hand, clenched into a fist. This time, silence meets silence. In orbit, Reese activated the last fail-safe. It was never meant to be used, but they were out of time. A network of satellites, buried in ice on Europa, lit up. Long-range energy field generators designed not to shoot, but to distort. The Annihilation Fleet emerged at the edge of Earth's atmosphere, and every orbital sensor went black. Worm didn't fight them. It embraced them, hijacked their internal systems, fed them false coordinates, triggered internal targeting malfunctions, turned their weapons toward empty voids. But one ship made it through. It broke Worm's grip and fired. The sky over the Atlantic split. A beam of silent light carved down from orbit, targeting the Resistance's main infrastructure hub in Sierra Leone. But the blast never reached the ground. A counterbeam, fired from the moon, intercepted it. It wasn't Earth tech. It wasn't Worm. It was a foreign ship, Hydra 3. The Alien Council had sent their own fleet without warning and parked it behind the moon. Small, underpowered, but loyal, and willing to die for Earth. In 20 minutes, 5 of the 12 Annihilation ships were destroyed, 3 disabled, 2 retreated, 2 vanished. Earth's upper atmosphere smoldered, but the planet stood. People watched the sky go dark, then bright again, and they didn't panic. They started moving, not away from cities, but toward them, to repair, to rebuild, to prepare for the next round. Because it was no longer about surviving, it was about enduring. In the ruins of the orbital station, with fire still dancing outside the hull windows, Reese sat quietly beside Merrick and muttered, "They'll come again." She nodded. Yes, but next time. The galaxy might not stay quiet. He looked at her. You mean they'll fight with us? I mean, we started a fire, and everyone loves to watch something burn. But eventually someone's gonna ask, what do we build in its place? Dax walked through the rubble of the target zone. The blast crater had taken out the relay tower, but civilians had survived. Tunnels. Planning. Grit. He helped pull a young girl from the wreckage. She was bloody, breathing, and clutching a small toy spiral in her hand. Is it over? She asked. No, he said. Are we gonna lose? He looked at her, at the fires, the smoke, the people rising to their feet. No, he said again, this time with fire in his voice, because now the silence belongs to us. The fires across Earth finally began to dim, not because the war had ended, but because humanity had learned to live inside the fire. Ash covered cities that still stood tall. Craters had torn through regions where the Dominion's Ghost Fleet struck, but reconstruction began before the smoke even cleared. A crater in Sierra Leone was already surrounded by scaffolding. Children ran barefoot through ruins with makeshift spiral flags strapped to their backs. They didn't understand what Worm was. They didn't care. They just knew Earth had fought back. The cost was brutal. Thousands dead. Entire cities cracked open. Water systems failing in the southern belt. But Earth had something no empire could calculate. Endurance in the bones. Reese sat in what was left of the orbital command center. The walls groaned. The power was down to backup circuits. Half the crew were dead or displaced. Merrick's right arm was burned and bound in torn gauze, but she was still moving like the battle wasn't finished. Because for her, it wasn't. We repelled annihilation ships, she said, voice coarse. We sent Worm into systems light years away. Half the galaxy thinks we're gods. Reese gave her a hard look. And the other half? They think we're devils. He exhaled slowly. They're both wrong. We're just tired. She leaned against the wall beside him. So what now? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood and looked down at Earth through the cracked glass. Fires. Rebuilding. Life. "We send a message," he finally said. "Another speech?" "No, not to them. To us." On the ground, Dax stood before an improvised comms tower in the heart of what was once London, now just a shell of steel and memory. The new Resistance Council had given him the right to broadcast globally. He didn't write a speech. He didn't rehearse. He simply walked up, turned on the camera, and said what came from the gut. "You already know who I am? That doesn't matter anymore. What matters is who we are now." He looked tired, bruised, but not defeated. "Some of you think we won. We didn't. We survived. And that's not the same thing." He let that settle. We shook the galaxy, made them look at us again, not as victims, not as servants, but as a force, not because of our weapons, or worm, or satellites, but because we remembered who we are. He raised a hand and curled his fingers slowly into a fist. "We are the silence between two wars. We are the scream that comes after enough patience. We are the reason empires don't sleep anymore." He paused, eyes fierce. "But this isn't just about Earth now. We lit the fuse, and what comes next depends on who picks it up." The transmission echoed across every Earth channel, then bled into space. Dozens of colony relays picked it up, then pirate relays, then outposts once buried in Dominion control. Some watched in awe, others in fear, a few in hunger. On Hydra 3, the resistance flag of Earth now flew alongside the planet's own. The Hydran Council, long quiet and strategic, voted unanimously to recognize Earth not as a war zone, not as a victim, but as a sovereign power. They sent a message back. "The silence you weaponized became a beacon. If the Dominion retaliates again, we will answer." It wasn't a promise of protection. It was an invitation to unity. Others followed. 7 colonies, then 12, then 30. Some sent ships, some sent food, some just sent words. We remember, we endure, we rise. But unity wasn't universal. From deep within the Dominion's fractured empire, the true enemy awakened. The silence had made them bleed. The defeats had made them rage. But Earth's message? That made them think. And for the Dominion, thinking meant adapting. In a vault beyond the star cluster of Vorex, the Dominion unveiled something hidden even from its own military. A program not built to conquer planets, but to erase memory. Not just biological memory, digital, structural, cultural. They called it severance, a weapon that could sever a planet from its own past, unmake languages, collapse data networks, wipe systems clean down to genetic memory encoding. If deployed on Earth, there would be no survivors, not physically, but psychologically. It would be as if Earth never existed. Reese received fragments of the operation from rogue Dominion defectors, whispered warnings, hidden data packets snuck through forgotten comm lines. He stood before Marek and Dax, with the report in hand. "They're not coming to destroy us," he said. "They're coming to erase us." Marek leaned forward. "Can we stop it?" Reese shook his head. "Not directly. It's too fast, too precise. But we can do something worse." Dax blinked. "Worse?" "We can make sure Earth lives somewhere they can't reach." "Where?" He looked at them both. "In every system they failed to silence. In every colony, every mind, every transmission we sent. We spread Earth's memory. Not our location, not our codes, not our weapons, our story." The plan was called Ember, a final global worm protocol designed to do one thing: back up the human condition. Not files, not data. Us. Earth's music, its literature, its defiance, its voice, its language, its soul. Not stored in one place, not in a vault. Spread into systems, AI cores, freighter ships, weapon caches, children's toys, refugee kits, black market tech. Every corner of the galaxy would carry a piece. If Earth was erased, the galaxy would still remember the voice that once whispered, "You mistook patience for weakness." Severance was activated. 12 ships cloaked in null fields. 3 slipped past Worm. 2 detonated over Earth's upper orbit. 1 reached low atmosphere and fired. It wasn't like a bomb. There was no explosion, only a white pulse and a silence. For 30 seconds, every sound on Earth died. Birds, machines, voices, the wind. Reese fell to his knees in orbit, his hearing stolen by the wave. Merrick blacked out. Dax, in the rubble of a Paris relay zone, saw a little boy scream, and no sound came out. Then it stopped. And Earth breathed again, but the weapon had triggered something unexpected. Ember responded. The world lit up. Satellites burst like flares. AI cores erupted in blinding light. Cities began uploading everything. Broadcasts went wild. Earth didn't try to fight the erasure. It flooded the universe with its final memory. Worm sent Earth's story in every direction, to the edges of the galaxy, to satellites waiting beyond Neptune, to colonies still under Dominion rule, to planets that had never even heard Earth's name. Everywhere. Dax opened his eyes. He saw the people rising again, bloodied, deafened, shocked, but alive. Children helped elders. Mechanics returned to consoles. Voices, at first cracked, returned. And the first sound to rise again wasn't words. It was laughter. The Dominion recalled its ships. Severance had failed. Earth had not been erased. It had been spread too wide. Now, to erase Earth, they'd have to erase everything, and no empire, not even theirs, had that kind of reach. Reese stood before Earth's new council. "I don't think they'll come again," he said. Marek nodded. "Not out of fear," Dax added, "out of futility." Reese smirked. They mistook silence for submission. He looked at the stars. Now they'll mistake the stars for Earth. And so it ended. Not in fire, not in blood, but in memory, in a whisper that turned into a story that became a signal that became a warning, and that warning became something eternal. Earth